Inshallah, on this possibly last or penultimate day of Ramadan, we are hopefully trying to raise funds for the good cause of good causes of I3. The many projects it's doing, its academy, the new de novo research it is doing in many fronts in the field of da'wah, Islamic apologetics, polemics against Western ideologies and various other kufr ideologies and so on and so forth. And it's teaching of students, it's training up students with new methods of instruction that aim to improve retention, improve critical thinking, and improve use of the Islamic lens to view all matters and things. So inshallah, we're here to support the I3 Institute, of which I'm a researcher, alhamdulillah, and also we will discuss some of the projects and things that I3 is doing, and discuss some of the issues and topics that are facing Muslims today as part of this stream, inshallah.
Inshallah. So, for those who don't know, Ustad Abdullah and myself are parts of the I3 Institute. We've both taught there, lectured there, and spoken on behalf of the Institute. For those who aren't aware, what is the I3 Institute? The I3 Institute was founded by Sheikh Mehmet Osto here in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And it's an institute which provides both free and paid education for Muslims. The key word in I3 Institute is really institute. It's an institution for the benefit of the Muslim Ummah and by extension the world. So what does this institute do, and why should we support this particular institute? There are many academies, there are many organizations which currently exist, as well as our organizations, and we encourage you to support as many of them as you can. But particular to the I3 Institute, its role in the Muslim society is essential. It's taken the everyday Muslim, the Muslim who practices now and then, the Muslim who may not be too familiar with Islam, and providing a sound basis for which they can live and thrive in their lives as Muslims. So it provides free education, community, it provides a social cohesion which you may not experience in any other organization. And on this basis, the I3 Institute has released a new program called the Muslim Blueprint. And this program is meant to cater to the Muslim who is in their late 20s, early 30s, potentially a working professional trying to gain Islamic education without having the time to necessarily go through a full program. It also provides networking relationships for your business and profession, and it tries to build a group that you can work with and through even after you leave the program and benefit from it, inshallah. So, for those of you joining, you know that Ustad Abdullah and myself were very much engaged in da'wah. But we don't just do public facing da'wah. Ustad Abdullah, we also do research and we do seminars and we do courses. Can you tell us a bit more of the background work that the I3 Institute is facilitating for our da'wah?
Yes, well, alhamdulillah, there's quite a lot of de novo research that I3 have been supporting, and of course, research costs money. The most important resource, of course, is time to be able to research, especially many of individuals, academics of the du'at and public speakers and others. Especially as you get older, your spare time gets less and less. And in our youth, we did research in our spare time, and our spare time was much more available. But as you get older, of course, with all the commitments that fall upon you, your spare time reduces. But also the cost of books, the cost of reaching out to academics. Sometimes academics also they require time for consultation. There's a lot of things that go into research, online subscriptions to various academic resources and so on. So this is where, and sometimes hard to find books. You can't just find a free PDF online for it. You have to actually buy the thing and read it. And many of our libraries have books into the thousands now. So this is something which is required for the research. But the the new kind of projects that we're engaging in is quite a few. I'll leave Ijaz to discuss the ones that he's been working on for many years, which is quite fascinating, interesting. The ones that I've been working on is looking at, you might say, Islamic political fiqh. So understanding how Islam organizes society, manages society, and gives solutions to particular problems. So we all know that, for example, riba is haram. We know it's forbidden. But how would a riba-free financial and economic system look today that would be viable and that would lead to progress in a world where it's now accepted that interest-based transactions are the basis for money itself? Money is even created as a debt, basically, when these central banks, which are private corporations, they produce money. They print out money for the economic system. They give it to the American government. When the government needs to put money in circulation, they give it at a cost, and you say, well, here's the money, and you have to pay us back this money plus extras. And there's actually literally not enough money to pay back the banks, because the central banks, because they literally produce this money in the first place, but expected to, as a loan, with extra to with that interest obviously to be given back to them, because it's a loan, right? So there's literally not enough money to pay back all the money ever created, and money is created as debt, right? So literally money is debt now. So this is the situation. How do we actually create a viable Islamic economic system for the modern age that does not compromise a single jot of Islam, as many unfortunately have been tempted to do when they say, oh, you know what, maybe some interest is halal. They do istihlal, they just rubber stamp. Oh, you know what, by its darura, necessity requires us to now
Just a
accept
little
some
bit,
things.
Abdullah,
Yeah.
how do you expect us to afford our condos, our supercars? I mean, these things are essential to life. So are you saying that Muslims should not enjoy the benefits of a good economy?
I enjoy the benefits of a good economy, but the key word there is good. A good economy is what, right? It's not just that it's doing well, but it is halal, and it is deriving money from the halal. So a good economy for Muslims in an Islamic system is one that is not based on the generational wealth of riba. It prevents monopolizing or monopolies, for example. These are all things which are prohibited. It distributes land, unused land. It doesn't let people just hoard land. It distributes land to those who are willing to work that land to maximize the agricultural use of land. It even lightens the kharaj, or payments, or the payments that you must pay on the land for those who artificially irrigate land, to encourage artificial irrigation that maximizes yield. These are all from the hadith, by the way. Everything I'm telling you is from hadith, but are not really known by Muslims. And that's the example of some of the research that really needs to be done so Muslims can understand how a current economic system would work, an Islamic economic system would work. You want to buy a house, so no doubt you'd like to buy a house. Sajaz, we'd all like to buy to own the houses that we live in. The issue is then, how do you do it? So in the West, of course, the Western system that's been put forward to us as the supposed only possible alternative, only possible way, is you buy this house by getting a loan, because the house is so expensive that you couldn't reasonably pay for it in even 10 years. In most people's salaries, it will make 20, 30 years, depending on the kind of house you want to get and your salary. But it's because you get the loan for that, and the loan, you have to pay interest on that loan. And if you default on that loan, so if you basically if you missed certain payments up to a point that the bank declares you've defaulted, they will keep your money, and they will take the house and sell it off to recuperate that. So they will keep everything you've paid. You could have paid 50% of it. You could have paid 75% of it, and they could default. If they default you on that loan, they keep your money that you've paid for the loan, and they take your house at the same time. And they don't give you anything. They don't give you any money back on many types of mortgages. In Islam, that would be considered to be an incomplete transaction, because like if I give you if I give you money, then and in return for a house, let's just say, and then let's say I stop paying you for that, and you want to take back the house, you must return back my money, because the transaction hasn't been completed. Now, of course, the banks get around this by simply saying that we're not buying the house. Well, they did buy the house, but we are just giving you the loan to buy the house, and the house is collateral, as in the house we will put up the house in case you default, right? But if you default, you must then return, and let's say they sell the house for more than they gave you the loan money for. Then they must return back your money because they've made no loss, right? They've made no loss. So this is the unfair, unjust system in the West. And the irony of this is that the inflated price of the house, the reason why the house is an inflated price, is because people are able to pay for it. Supply and demand, right? It's basic principles of economics. If people couldn't pay for houses, if the vast majority of people couldn't pay for houses, then the price would naturally just go down until it becomes a more reasonable amount, such that people could then reasonably pay for it or begin saving up to pay for it. But it's because of the existence of these massive interest-based loans that means that people are always able to pay for houses because of these loans. And so this system artificially inflates housing as a bubble, right? It artificially inflates the price of houses because of the presence of loans. Whereas in an Islamic system, you wouldn't have. Now, what would be the Islamic alternative, of course? Now, yes, houses cost a lot of money, but they don't cost that much money to create compared to how much you pay for it. But the Islamic system, of course, would understand. Of course, houses are still expensive. They're not you can't just, not a week's wages, generally speaking, for most people, unless you're a very successful footballer. But from a Portuguese background, playing for a Saudi team, but yeah, unless you're that kind of guy, you can't pay for a house with a week's wages. So
Abdullah,
yeah.
Are you saying then that the I3 Institute allows you to do research like this, which has practical impacts on the Ummah in its machinations, in our economic policies, in the daily lives of Muslims? It facilitates a body of research that the ulama can use to treat with delicate fatwas for the modern day. Would that be accurate?
Oh, yes, indeed. Because the thing about unfortunately many Islamic scholars today is you can memorize hadith, verses of Quran, you can memorize tafsir, and you can study all the legal principles to derive exegesis from the texts. But if you don't have a full understanding of the world itself, how the world works, of the human reality behind things, then your fatwa are going to be misshapen, because many scholars will just declare something to be by necessity. They will do istihlal. Unfortunately, they'll say this is halal by necessity. They'll say there's no other alternative, so by necessity we'll just say it's halal to have mortgages, let's just say. And it's like interest-based mortgages, and that's not true. It's not necessary for that to be the case. It's just that we've been so used to being defeatist and feeling weak that we feel that we just can't control anything, and the world just seems a confusing place to many Muslims. All these things randomly just seem to happen out of our control, such that unfortunately now this leads Muslims. I think this derives from the fact that Muslims have an inability to understand social and political causality.
I don't think it's the inability to understand. I think it's the inability to have the desire to want to understand. Would that be the case here?
Yes, you corrected me, Chris. That's actually true. Sorry, I didn't. Not inability. They seem to not have currently the desire or even knowledge of the possibility of knowing something more in depth and detail about studying human societies in of themselves. How do humans work? Anthropology, sociology. How do humans actually work in themselves? This does not seem to be a very important subject. The problem is that humans are the subject of fatwa. They're the ones that you're trying to make fatwa for. You can't just simply say, I'm going to make these fatwas based on an abstract thing that no one understands. But because then you won't make accurate and wise fatwa. And that's why I always point out that there are many great scholars today, amazing scholars, subhanAllah, alhamdulillah, for them. And unfortunately, there are many scholars that, if compared to classical scholars, are certainly not at that same level. So what did the medieval Muslim world that didn't have the internet, that didn't have computers, technology, calculators, telescopes, and all this, what makes them superior to many scholars today? And clearly there is a big difference between classical scholarship and modern day scholarship, is that I would say that classical scholars were polymaths, right? They studied human realities, they studied politics, they studied economics, they studied these realities. They were qualified in many subjects. They were interested in many subjects that they went into depth and detail over. They weren't just rubber stamps.
yes.
So this is what we need to. This is what I3's Muslim Blueprint program and its Academy program teaching Muslims about fiqh, teaching Muslims about tafsir and so on and so forth. This is what it's aiming to inculcate, and a fully rounded, holistic, knowledgeable Muslim, future Muslim leader, thought leader that will be able to wisely and accurately guide Muslims through the modern world and reshape the modern world to fit Islam, not reshape Islam to fit the status quo.
So I guess we have on the screen the Muslim Blueprint program established by Sheikh Usta and the I3 Institute. They've already trained over 4,000 students internationally. They've had 20,000 people attend their local events, and they have over 200 volunteers worldwide. So clearly, this institute cares not just about its local population. It doesn't simply just care about local organizations and partners. It has a world view. It's looking at the world as it is, and it wants to get Muslims wherever they are, however they are, educated with Islam in a very practical way. And I think this is why they designed the Muslim Blueprint program. I don't know if it can be seen on the screen, but it's about emphasizing your identity as a Muslim and living authentically as a Muslim. I mean, a lot of people right now in the chat, you may get your Islamic knowledge from random YouTube videos, from whatever comes across your timeline, your news feed, etc., random, forwarded messages or PDF files. Ustad Abdullah, how long have we seen now? We've been on the internet a very long time. This is, people consider being religious online a person who simply shares quotes or, uses fancy diacritics for their name, right? Which is simply not the case. There is actually a need for valid and authentic Islamic education. Sheikh Oster is a well-educated and proficient Muslim scholar, and he continues his studies to this very day in constant network with other scholars, and he's reached out to du'at like Abdullah and myself and many others in order to spread the message of Islam and to empower the da'wah that we do. And so things like the Muslim Blueprint, this program is designed for you sitting at home right now thinking, okay, I've gotten the gist of online da'wah. I have my job, I've got my family, but I really want to have something which is foundational, something which is substantial and to ground my Islam. I mean, for goodness sake, this could be the very last day of Ramadan that you may ever see. It may also be the very last day for Ramadan that many of us will experience. And so, how are you going to spend these potentially final few hours? What will you potentially be doing? What are your plans after Ramadan? Don't let your Ramadan die in this stream. Don't let it finish. You turn off the phone and you go on with your life from the next day. We want you to take up the mantle of Islam, keep up the motivation you've gained during the sacred month of Ramadan, and put it to good use. You've lit the fire for motivation towards your Islam in this month. You've sacrificed so much. You've adhered to the Islamic laws and rituals which you must obey in this month. You've tried to fulfill as many sunnah acts as you possibly can. You're doing dhikr and dua constantly. You've read the Quran. Okay, but what comes next? You have to build on that. And that's why it's called the Muslim Blueprint. You're building something with it. If you can see the link on the screen, I want you to understand what it says, that the Muslim Blueprint program is not just another Islamic program feeding you knowledge without a practical, powerful and proven application process. You need an actual blueprint. So what will it do? It will rid you from being confused and having doubts. It will allow you to have understanding and to embrace your Islam holistically. It will remove that sense of lacking of fulfillment and meaning in your life. It will provide you with the ability to unlock your true purpose in the dunya. It will remove the inability that you currently experience to serve the community, khidmah, service, giving back to the people who live around you. It gives you the ability to be empowered to make a lasting and meaningful change for the ummah. The link to the Muslim Blueprint Program by the I3 Institute is in the description of this video, and it's also in the chat. And I want to follow up with what Ustad Abdullah was saying earlier. We are trying to raise funds for the I3 Institute because as du'at, as researchers, as teachers and educators, books cost money. The du'at have day jobs. The du'at have multiple day jobs, trying to earn for their families while also trying to strive for the ummah. And so organizations like the I3 Institute try to bridge that gap and provide us with resources to do the essential work that we do. Ustad Abdullah, you would have seen a transformation in the university scene over the last decade where conversations about Islam and politics has now become, I would argue, more acceptable on a university campus, whereas before in the earlier neocon Bush years, it was very anti-Muslim, anti-free speech, anti-Muslims in politics. And now you have MSAs willing to engage on this topic. And correct me here, I believe that that change is partly because of organizations like the I3 Institute, where organically students who belong to the MSAs are part of the organization and they're trying to are trying to drive this change on campuses where it's okay to speak about Muslims and their daily lives, their siyasa, their politics. Is that correct? What do you think, Ustad Abdullah?
Of course. I mean, what I've been extensively seeing from IFRI's work with MSAs, and in the UK we call them ISOCs, Islamic Society.
Yes, sorry, yes.
Yeah, very North American of you. Is basically that you know, they're one of the very few organizations which are actually encouraging students to discuss and learn about a holistic Islam, not just a lobotomized or secularized Islam which only talks about ibadah, only a private ibadah, sorry to be more precise, with personal ibadah, but talks about how Islam sets a criterion for society that places Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the highest reference point for society, that the highest furqan is his kalam. So this is something that is usually not wanting to be touched by many MSAs and ISOCs, usually because of ignorance, because their parents didn't talk about it, because maybe their local imam in the masjid doesn't talk about those things, and they want to talk about, they want to know what Islam's solution is to those things, to how to solve societal problems, how to resolve their affairs, how to seek the good in the dunya and in the affairs of humans, and they don't know. And so I3 has provided amazing resource for them and encouragement for them, getting them involved with having lectures and events where they invite speakers to speak about these things. They have workshops. They talk about how Islam can provide practical solutions. And of course, and maybe we'll discuss this perhaps in a bit, is I3 have played a very vital role in turning around the rise of left-wing politics and ethics that's spreading amongst the Muslims in North America. And they have put resources into giving Muslims the Islamic alternative, because if you don't teach, you see, I always mention that if youth want to change the world, youth want to see justice, they want to campaign for something, they want to make a mark on the world. But if you don't teach them what Islam says, how Islam solves the problems in the world, how the Islamic alternative it can provide real justice, they'll seek it elsewhere. As the Christians say, the devil makes work for idle hands, right?
Yes.
And so what we saw, there was a case at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver in Canada, which was one of the most left-wing, deemed to be one or the most left-wing university in North America, which is saying something. Was the Muslim community there was rife with left-wing politics, with race-based identity politics arguments. They were overriding Islamic adab and akhlaq. They were saying that this is not important. We can use methods that left wing tell us to do: feminism, secularism, and outright Marxism. Even to the point there was an attempt by Muslims to put Karl Marx's books in the Musalla area, right? So you know how the Musalla you might have, some hadith books. You certainly have Quran books that you can recite from, or translations and so on. These are the books you usually see in musallas generally. They wanted to bring Karl Marx's books into the musalla there. So the MSA were actually beleaguered. They were desperate. They needed help. They had no connection with I3 beforehand. They reached out to me to like, could I do something? I said, look, I was very busy. This is just one MSA out of many that I've visited. But then I3 then said, you know what? You go and help them. We're gonna give you the resources to actually focus on them and give them the help that they needed. And this created an amazing domino effect, where basically we turned around the MSA in the space of a year to one which was rife with left-wing ideologies, to the point that any Muslim that stood up for Islam was called a racist or a sexist, and supporting white supremacy or supporting male patriarchy, all this stuff. It turned around in the space of you to being now the complete opposite. Everyone on that campus now, well, not everyone, but like most of the Muslims on that campus, they mock and they laugh at left-wing ideologies, and whereas beforehand no one was brave enough to speak out against it, otherwise they were scared they'd be labeled. And this is when I talk about left-wing adherents, I'm not talking about the non-Muslims here. I'm talking about they are Muslims. It was key portions of the Muslim demographic in the university that were calling for these left-wing ideologies, calling for Karl Marx, Marxism, all this stuff, lit openly, right? And this is where
just to be clear,
I made the difference.
Yeah, you're saying unironically there were Muslim students pushing ideologies counter to Islam while identifying as Muslims.
Oh yes, yes, and they would say that these things are part of, are in congruence with the spirit of Islam. So that's why we can follow these ideologies.
In congruence with the spirit of Islam, subhanAllah. I just want to say wa ʿalaykum as-salāmu to Brother Abbas from Conversation Islam. And I would like to welcome all the subscribers who've just joined us from the SC Dawah channel. Jazakallah khairan to Brother Naveed for facilitating that. So inshallah, we're trying to raise funds for the I3 Institute. As you've just heard from Ustad Abdullah, it's about making practical underground changes to the way that Muslim students live and thrive. As you know, once you enter into university, there are so many competing ideologies which they may accidentally or intentionally, as we've just heard, fall into. And so how do you identify good ideologies from bad? How do you identify ideologies or messages which are coherent with the Islamic tradition compared to those which are counter to it, right? So this is what the I3 Institute is trying to do. One, it empowers students, it empowers du'at, and it empowers Muslim researchers and academics to get this essential work done. Now, Ustad Abdullah, right now, the Muslim world is facing a crisis in Gaza, a crisis in Gaza. And what I've seen, and this may differ across different countries, but here in Toronto, Canada, I'm seeing on the ground that members of the I3 Institute were the catalysts for Muslim organizations and students turning their focus to Gaza and putting their differences aside. This is the important thing. We all are calling for unity to help the Muslims of Gaza, to facilitate their ease, their survival, to facilitate humanitarian aid in a most just, ethical, and legal way. And so I'm looking at I3 members right now who are young and who want to make a positive change in the world. They went out in last year, October. They worked hard in November and December. And they went to other organizations in Masajid and they basically said, listen, we might have our fiqh and political differences, but what we cannot have a difference about is that the life of every Muslim individual in Gaza matters. And if we don't unite to step up for these people, to protect them, to lobby international governments to facilitate protection for them, then who else will do this work, Brother Abdullah? Ustad Abdullah, I'm just going to bring on just very briefly Brother Hassan from the I3 Institute. I think you know him quite well. In fact, he's one of the very first people I met when I was introduced to the I3 Institute. I don't mean to, speak negatively about him to his face, but I do think, mashallah, he's a wonderful brother, but he should support Ustad Ijaz the Trini just a little bit more. Let me let me just add him to the team. As-salāmu alaykum, Brother Hassan. It's good to see you again. It's been some time. You're muted, Ustad Hassan. Let me just see if I can. There we go.
Barakātuhu, man. It's good to see you. Good to see you. As-salāmu alaykum, Ustad Abdullah. How you doing?
ʿalaykum wa raḥmatullāhi wa barakātuhu. I'm fine, brother. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you both and accept from you for making this a possibility.
I mean, so Brother Hassan, you've been with the I3 Institute, I think, almost from its inception. You've seen the transformation that the I3 Institute has overgone itself as an institution, and the transformation it's allowing for in the individual lives of Muslims. So can you tell us a bit more about the good work that the I3 Institute is doing and why people watching now should click that donate link?
100%. Some of the work that Ustad Abdullah spoke about, I'll speak about my own personal story. Before I3 understood Islam as just as rituals and things of worship to do, but really as a way of life, as a system of life for every single area of life, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had provided a solution for every single area of life that was completely.
I think we might be sponsored by Apple here. No, okay. I'm being told that we're not. Is that an inshallah? Do you want to be sponsored by Apple, Brother Hassan? Would you? Dodgy question. We might need a fake answer on this. But please continue.
Somebody could go to I3, I guess. But really, in clarifying,
I'll be right back. Please forgive.
Sure, thank you. So these concepts of that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had provided a solution for every area of life that was completely unknown. And alhamdulillah, I think once that sits into the mind, like right now, the I3 Institute has a program. If you guys go to I3 Institute, the letter I and number 3 institute.ca, and click on Blueprint and click on the program and look Muslim Blueprint on the top right, and just look at what it provides. Within 11 months, you're all the confusion could be gone as to how life should be lived. And once that happened to me, everything was clear, because now I didn't need to second guess how I did anything in life. There was just answers provided completely, and that removes so much stress and concerns from my heart that wallahi, there's nothing like it. There's nothing that comes close to Islam. No other methodology, man-made, can never equal what Allah has created and given. So alhamdulillah, this is the biggest blessing. And
alhamdulillah. So someone just asked, sorry, are we fundraising for Palestine? We're not fundraising for aid for Palestine in this particular stream, although we do recommend you give money for the Palestinians in Gaza who seriously need it right now. They need our help and support. But also in the West and around the Muslim world, the Muslims need to be revived intellectually and spiritually in order to come to the aid effectively of the Palestinians, because we have all the resources at hand to actually come to the aid of Palestinians. We have the armies, we have the oil, the gas, we have the numbers, we have the experts, and we have arms industries in Turkey, Pakistan, and so on. So we have all these means that we can come to the aid of the Palestinians. The question is, why aren't we doing so? right? It's not a question of means, like lack of means. It's a question of lack of will, lack of understanding. And so it's because Muslims lack the understanding of Islam, like understanding, looking at the world through an Islamic lens, and like understanding how to implement Islam in the modern world without compromising any of the deen of Islam, that this is why we have the Muslim Blueprint program, which is designed to revive intellectually anyone that comes to it, to the point that they will understand Islam holistically, every aspect, not just private personal worships, not just about Aqidah, but also applying the Aqidah in our lives, i.e., solving societal problems. How do we solve economic issues? How do we have a good economic system without riba, interest, which I was discussing earlier on? These are the kind of the solutions that we need. How do how do we create fiqh for the current situations? Like, is AI halal, haram? How can we use AI? What are the fiqh issues concerning AI and so on? And how can Muslims employ that to support an Islamic system, an Islamic state? This is the kind of things that we need Muslims to start thinking about. And we need Muslims to readjust their worldview from just viewing Islam as a religion of their parents to actually a living, breathing deen that they want to see implemented in the world today. So because of this, we have the Muslim Blueprint program, and this is what we are raising funds for, is to basically revive the ummah so that they can come to the aid of the Palestinians and resolve their plight once and for all, not just give them one-off aid or even build their houses, rebuild, which we should. But we all know that these houses that we build with costly, takes time and effort and money, are going to be easily bombed and destroyed, all funded by the US taxpayer. So this is one of the things that we're dealing with. Also, a second stream that I3 is also dealing with is it is doing research on refutation of Zionism, its history, the history of the movement. It's doing research on obviously Palestinian rights, what would how Israel uses cunning laws to take away the rights of Palestinians, even Israeli quote unquote citizens who are Arabs, how they discriminate against them. So this is also another angle, because we need to create a public awareness campaign, a public information campaign to combat the misinformation campaign of the Zionists in the West. Because if the West cuts off, the West is the umbilical cord. It is to Israel. If you cut this off, then Israel will be defeated, and it can't maintain its apartheid system anymore. So this is what we are trying to do. This long-term, the long-term solution, the long game, which needs to be invested in as well. But at the same time, we also have to we have to alleviate the suffering of the Palestinians in the short term, of course, by giving them food, aid, and tents and shelter and so on and so forth as well. So we need to do both. So we're not raising funds specifically to give aid to the Palestinians in terms of food in this stream, although many of us have donated privately. But we are trying to find these long-term solutions, and we've developed long-term solutions, the long game that inshallah will create permanent solutions that will create peace and justice for everyone.
Yeah. Jazakallah khair, Ustad Abdullah. I want to tell you guys a story, actually. But first you do that, please go to i3institute.ca/donate. Okay. Can we share that link, Ustad Abdullah? I'm not sure how to.
Yeah, the link is in the chat, and the link is in the video description right now. Okay. So it's pinned. Anyone and everyone is welcomed to go to the link right now. It's there. Yeah. We're just working on receiving donations. Brother Hassan, why should people donate today on potentially the final day of Ramadan? Yeah. Can you let us know? Yeah.
100%. That's exactly what I want to tell you a story. You know, when you were a kid, think about the dream you had. And most people had a dream. People had a dream. Some of the people had a dream to be an astronaut. Some people had a dream to be a big business person. Some people had a dream to, do great things with their lives. And as the adulthood hits you, most people give up on that dream. They think, hey, you know what? Being a Spider-Man, being somebody who saves the world, man, maybe it's not for me. Just go be a doctor. I'll just go be a, accountant. I'll just go do some work. But we forget the best examples we had. We forget the examples of the Sahaba and the Anbiya who came to rescue their societies. The Anbiya came to bring about peace in their society. Musa alayhi salam came to stand for all his people who were enslaved. Isa alayhi salam comes to challenge the Roman Empire. You have Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam who comes to establish Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's deen and removes all the problems from Arabia and for a larger part of the world, and that we have the deen today. And the Sahaba who worked with the Prophet ﷺ to bring about that peace and prosperity and justice to an area, remove the oppression of different forms, and they did that with their own hands, with their own tongues, and with their own actions. So what we talk about, and this, what I just shared with you, this is the dream that we instill in our generations. This is what we need to instill when we talk about it. That we need to be the Umar ibn al-Khattabs, the Abu Bakr radiallahu anhuma, the Uthman ibn Affan, the Ali radiallahu anhuma, the Khalid bin Walid, the Salahuddin al-Ayyubi rahimahullah. We need these people today. And this is who you need to be. This is who I need to be. This is who we all need to be, so that we can take care of our ummah and we can take care of this deen properly. And this is the dream that we speak about at the Institute, that this is who we all need to be. It's cool to have the practice, but the 5 pillars are the foundation upon which the deen stands. And this dream is what we instill, and we've done so to thousands and thousands of people. Now, my question to you is, you may be thinking, hey, you know what? What's happening in Gaza is terrible. It's absolutely, we see videos. I saw videos today. I don't want to share it with you, what I see. But the question is, what is the solution? Like Ustad Abdullah mentioned just now about the solutions, the solution is going to be when we have the Salahuddin al-Ayyubi of today, when we have the Umar ibn al-Khattabs of today. And that's who we need to create today. And that is our goal. And that is what we are trying to do at the I3 Institute. And so every dollar you donate, or any currency, everything you donate, all of that will go to creating this a possibility. If you can go to i3institute.ca, I don't know if I can share my page, Brother Ijaz, but i3institute.ca/program/MVP, or you can just click on Muslim Blueprint and just look at what is being taught: the modern Islamic history, the comparative Islamic and Western philosophies, Muslim identity, tazkiyah and ikhlaq, social responsibility. How do we take the biographies of great Muslim heroes? What do we learn from them? How do we become those people? That is what we're talking about. Tell me where that's being taught. And why? Because as we teach this, inshallah, we can have the future Salahuddin, the Abu Bakr, and the Umar ibn Khattab, radiallahu anhuma, all these people that can exist now. 20,000 people plus have gone through this message, and we are working on hundreds and thousands, if not millions of people to have access to this program. Very small, minimal fee just to cover some basic costs and expenses, but there's a lot more costs that come with it as a result. And here's the thing. With the potential chance of this being potentially the last day of Ramadan, or maybe if you started fasting Tuesday, maybe the second to last day of Ramadan, remember, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will multiply your efforts. Every single dollar you give is 700 times, like Allah says in Surah Baqarah, He multiplies it. And then in Ramadan, also another 70. You do the math. Every dollar ends up being, what's the math? It's 490,000 or so, 49,000. Every dollar equals $49,000 that you give. Every dollar. Okay? Teach him about Abu Bakr, Brother Rahman. Teach him. That's exactly who we need to be. Everybody has a different personality. So teach your kids about that. But remember, every dollar you give is going to be multiplied by 49,000. So I want to start off first. Look, in these types of situations, 80% of the cash is raised by 20% of the people. We're just looking for one person who can donate $5,000. And remember, it's a good thing to donate publicly and secretly. If you do it secretly, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and reward you. If you do it publicly, you encourage others. We're just looking for one person for $5,000. Do we have any takers?
Yeah, I mean, I like to. So there's a point someone made in the comments there. They said, if you had someone with the mindset of Khalid bin Walid or Salahuddin today, they'd go to jail the same day. The issue is, it's not for lack of individuals that could be these people. That we have people that have the potential to be these people. We have the ummah. You can't say that there's no one that has minds, and there's no one that have genius level thinking. Like Khalid bin Walid was a genius in terms of military strategy. It wasn't about just about the issue that they were military minds. The issue is that, I mean, Salahuddin actually initially wanted to be a scholar. He didn't actually want to go into being in the military career. You could say he was kind of forced into it in a way. It's about the outlook, the mentality they had,
correct,
how they applied themselves, and we don't need just one or two of them. We need millions upon millions of them. The commenters mentioned that why don't we teach people to become like Abu Bakr, Umar, radi anhum? Well, I mean, okay, I don't know if we can ever reach their righteousness, but what we can do is have the same outlook that they did, the same mindset, the same mentality of them, which is seeking only Allah's pleasure in all things, not just in our private worships, but in society. Because if we have a society where people have the same mindset, and not the same level of piety, because I don't think we can achieve that with the Sahabas. They were blessed individuals. But if we had a society that had the same mindset, then you will see great individuals arise from it. But it's not the great individuals that make the society great. It's the mindset of the society that makes a society great. And that's what we need, an Islamic mindset. We need people to look for the lens of Islam, making Allah's kalam, the furqan, the criterion of society. And this is what the Muslim Blueprint program is all about. It's about changing the mindset of the Muslim, making them look at the world through the comprehensive lens of Islam, and not just simply just telling them to be pious or righteous, but to tell them, well, how do you be pious and righteous in different situations? What is the righteous and pious solution to the interest-based banking system, which I was talking about earlier with Ijaz? How does Islam give an alternative system which is righteous, that would create justice? Because many times, for example, in the West, you see, the corruption of capitalism. In many cases, many rich people are not themselves more or less corrupt than anyone else in society. But when you live in a system that has certain rules of a game, right, a certain game, certain rules in it, where you're just focused on increasing your wealth by these means which are offered to you to increase your wealth, simply doing that and just playing the rules of the game. If the game is an unjust game, the rules are unjust, despite the fact you have many sincere people playing that game, the overall impact, overall result will be injustice. It will be wealth disparity. It will be mass poverty. It will be people unable to pay for their health bills, just from a system, because the system itself is unjust. It's based on unjust principles, even though you might have sincere people in that system. So this is where the Muslim blueprint isn't just simply about making Muslims more righteous and pious, as in doing more private ibadah, doing more dhikr, learning about Arabic, classical Arabic, learning about hifz and tafsir and tajweed. No, it's beyond. It's that plus. How do you apply the hukum of Allah to solve the problems of mankind, of society? A human being spends most of their time, when they're not sleeping, either with family or in society. They are engaged in the affairs of society, usually men, of course, in Muslim countries. And so if we don't have an answer to what to do in the affairs of society, the corruption of society will enter into our houses and corrupt our families. That's why there's a hadith by the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that the knots of Islam will be undone one by one. The first knot will be the knot of ruling, and the last knot will be the knot of salah, right? And it's no coincidence that in the West, when they create secularism and liberalism, we see a mass apostating from Christianity to becoming atheist or New Age spiritualist or a whole bunch of random things, right? But anything but actually following the Bible, because they removed that as a furqan from their society's affairs due to issues and problems, and that undid their belief and that undid their iman in Christianity, for example. And the same thing is happening in the Muslim world. Secularism, liberalization in the Muslim world by the rulers, but top down by accepting a Western system with elites that were educated with their mindsets. They were given the Western blueprint, and that created the elites in the Muslim world that want to liberalize the Muslim countries, and this is creating a corruption of Muslim countries. Now the youth are becoming more corrupt by society, so we can't ignore society. We can't pretend it doesn't exist. We need to give a blueprint for society. Wa ʿalaykum salām. Welcome back.
Just quickly, I don't mean to interrupt. We have 3 minutes to end the stream. So, Brother Hassan, Ustad Abdullah, let's get those donations rolling, inshallah. There's an alternative link prepared in the description of the video and on your screen now for pledge donations if you're currently unable to donate due to technical issues. Please forgive me, but the stream should end in about at 12:55 p.m. So last words in, inshallah, and then I'll end the stream. Just a couple.
Sure. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, the I3 is doing something more than just also teaching people. And in many cases, it was teaching people for free. For actually for like over, was it 8-9 years? It actually has been teaching people for absolute free, like just taking students for free. But eventually, as the numbers increase and the commitments increase, the time requirements increase, it requires resources for us, resources of our time, resources for materials we have to produce, and at the same time, I3 is not just teaching the Blueprint program, which is kind of a new revamping of its time-honored teaching programs before, but also new research about how to implement Islam in the modern world, what it looks like, how to practically achieve it with details, not just pie in the sky abstract things about established justice, call to good, but not giving you the specific detail. How do I buy a house in an Islamic state? How do we have an economy that doesn't depend on riba and that can be successful and dynamic and just? These are the questions that I3 are researching. And this research, that if you fund it, the millions of people that will be impacted by this research will all accrue for you as sadaqah jariyah. The more you invest, the multiple thousands of times multiplied it will be for centuries. Inshallah, it'll be changing Muslim civilization, inshallah, and it will all be down to the work that we started here and the work that you help. So please donate, give what you can to create a complete a radical change in the Muslim world, not to something new, but really to something old. But it's because the old has become something gharib for Muslims now. It looks like it's radical. It's not. It's just bringing back the old, bringing back what the Sahabas were upon. That's all that we should be calling. They gave enough solutions for us to implement today from the Quran and Sunnah. We don't need to change anything about this beautiful deen and this perfect deen that Allah left us. So, but we need to implement it. We need to have the will to implement it, and that requires having the mindset, the lens of Islam that we need to teach Muslims. Because, as I said, we can solve the problems of the Palestinians today, right? If we just had the will. But if there's no will from the Muslim Ummah, it's because there's something that's gone wrong in their mindset, and that needs to be changed. And I3 has been doing research into this, and this is what we have, the Muslim Blueprint program. So please donate, give what you can to affect a change, help us to affect decisive change, not just any kind of change, but decisive change in the West, in Muslims in the West, and for Muslims in the Muslim world.
100%. Jazakallah khair, sir.
All right, sorry guys, but we do have to end the stream here. The new donation link is in the video's description and it is in the chat. I want to thank Ustad Abdullah for joining us today, and Brother Hassan as well. Guys, this may not be the last fundraising stream we have, but we would like you to share I3's links. Check out our programs, because if you're here, you're interested in Islam, and if you're interested in Islam, you want to be a successful Muslim, inshallah. And that's what I3 Institute as an institution can help you achieve. Jazakumullahu khairan. Ramadan Mubarak and Eid Mubarak to all the brothers and sisters watching. And we'll see you all soon, inshallah. As-salāmu ʿalaykum.